The security camera footage would show exactly 14 minutes. 14 minutes between the moment 5 armed men entered Rosen's fine jewelry at 8:07 p.m. and the moment the last one stopped moving at 8:21 p.m. But the footage wouldn't show what really happened in that darkness. It wouldn't capture the precision, the violence, the years of training that turned a small jewelry store into a kill box. And it certainly wouldn't explain how a 52-year-old jeweler managed to do what the FBI couldn't accomplish in 4 years of investigation. Because the 5 men who walked into that store had no idea they weren't robbing a jeweler. They were walking into a trap set by one of the most lethal operators the Navy SEALs ever produced. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we begin this story of invisible expertise and explosive violence, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from today. And if you believe that the deadliest warriors are often the ones hiding in plain sight, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who protect us without ever asking for recognition. David Rosen had been opening his jewelry store at 7 a.m. and closing it at 8 p.m. for the past 11 years. Same routine, same keys, same locks. The store sat on West 47th Street in Manhattan's Diamond District, a single block that handled billions of dollars in jewelry transactions every year. 30 years ago, it had been his father's store, then his grandfather's before that. 3 generations of Rosens in the same 20 by 30 foot space, selling engagement rings and fixing watch bands. Most people who walked past the store saw exactly what they expected to see. An older Jewish man with graying hair and reading glasses, hunched over a jeweler's loupe, examining diamonds with the patience of someone who'd spent his whole life in the trade. They saw the photos on the wall. David as a young man with his father. David at his wedding. David with his 2 daughters who were now in college. What they didn't see was the other set of photos. The ones locked in a safe deposit box 3 blocks away. David in desert fatigues. David with his SEAL Team 6 Trident. David on a tarmac in a classified location with teammates whose faces were blurred out for security reasons. 16 years of photos that told a very different story about who David Rosen really was. He joined the Navy at 22, right after his father had a heart attack, and David realized life was too short to spend it all behind a jewelry counter. His father had recovered, but David had already signed the papers. BUD/S training, SEAL qualification. Then the selection process for DevGru, what most people incorrectly called SEAL Team 6, the most elite counterterrorism unit in the United States military. David had spent 16 years doing things he would never talk about, operations that would never be declassified, targets that officially didn't exist. He'd become an expert in close quarters battle, the art of fighting in confined spaces where every second mattered and hesitation meant death. Rooms, hallways, stairwell, the places where conventional tactics fell apart and only raw skill and training kept you alive. He'd left the teams at 38 when his father's health declined again. Someone needed to run the store. Someone needed to take care of the family business. David had done his time. He'd served his country. Now it was time to serve his family. That was 14 years ago. 14 years of cutting diamonds, sizing rings, appraising estate jewelry. 14 years of being invisible. Just another small business owner in a city full of them. The customers who came into Rosen's fine jewelry had no idea that the man helping them pick out anniversary gifts could kill them in 7 different ways before they could blink. That the hands that delicately set diamonds into platinum had once cleared rooms full of armed insurgents. That the calm voice explaining clarity grades and color scales had once talked teammates through firefights in the dark. David preferred it that way. The quiet life, the routine, the predictability. But tonight, predictability was about to end. At 7:55 p.m., David was finishing up with his last customer, a young couple looking at engagement rings. The man was nervous, the woman was excited, and David went through his practiced routine of showing them option, explaining the 4 C's, making them feel like this was the most important decision in the world, because to them, it was. They left at 8:02 p.m. with a deposit down on a 1-carat round brilliant that would be ready in 2 weeks. David locked the door behind them and flipped the sign to closed. Through the security gate that covered his storefront, he could see the street emptying out. Diamond District closed early. Most stores were dark by 7 p.m. By 8 p.m., the block was nearly deserted. David started his closing routine. Cash from the register into the safe. Display cases locked. Inventory counts updated in his ledger. He was meticulous about closing procedures. His father had drilled it into him. The business lives or dies by the details, David. Never rush the details. details. At 8:06 p.m., David's phone buzzed. A text from his daughter Rebecca, the oldest, asking if he'd sent her rent payment yet. He smiled and texted back that it would be there tomorrow, knowing she was probably panicking about being a day late. College had made her responsible but anxious. At 8:07 p.m., the back door exploded inward. David's training kicked in before his conscious mind registered what was happening. The sound, metal giving way, wood splintering, the direction, rear access from the alley, the timing, after closing when the street was empty. This wasn't random. This was planned. 5 men came through the back door fast and professional. Black tactical clothing, ski masks, weapons drawn, 3 handguns, 1 shotgun, 1 crowbar. They moved like a trained unit, spreading out, covering angles, controlling the space. The leader, the one with the shotgun, stepped forward. Big guy, 6'20", maybe 220, voice muffled behind the mask, but confident. On the ground, now. Face down, hands behind your head. David assessed in 2 seconds. 5 hostiles. Armed. Coordinated entry. Professional equipment. This wasn't their first robbery. The way they moved, the way they stacked at the door before entry, these guys had training. Military or police background, or they'd studied it carefully. The leader, the one with the shotgun, moved like someone with combat experience. Weight distribution was correct. Muzzle discipline was tight. He wasn't waving the weapon around like an amateur. He was controlling the room, using the shotgun to dominate the space while his team executed their roles. The other 4 spread out in a pattern David recognized from his own training. 2-man team to handle the objective, the safe. 1 on security, watching David. 1 on logistics, clearing the inventory. And the leader coordinating, maintaining tactical awareness, ready to respond to threats. This was a well-oiled machine. They'd done this before, many times, and they'd chosen his store specifically. The back door had a reinforced frame and 2 deadbolts. They'd blown it open with a breaching charge. The scorch marks on the frame were visible even in the dim light. That took planning, resources, knowledge. You didn't just walk up to a door with a breaching charge. You had to know the construction, calculate the explosive force, time the detonation. That was specialized skill. David's mind cataloged every detail. The leader's boots, tactical, expensive, probably Salomon or Merrill. The way the one called Frank's held his pistol, finger off the trigger until ready to fire. Proper grip, good stance. The efficiency of Carter opening the display cases. He had keys that worked, which meant surveillance or an inside source. Professional criminals, the kind that planned jobs for months, the kind that studied their targets, the kind that didn't leave witnesses. David's mind went through the options in the half-second before he responded. 5 against 1. They had weapons drawn. Element of surprise on their side. Store layout favored them. They controlled the back exit, and he was trapped between them and the locked front security gate. Any resistance right now would be suicide. His SEAL instructors had drilled it into him during close quarters combat training. Sometimes the best tactical move is to wait. Be patient. Let your enemy make mistakes. Create opportunities instead of forcing them. So David did exactly what they told him. Got on the ground, face down, hands behind his head, played the terrified jeweler. Let them think they were in control. Let them get comfortable. Let them make mistakes. Safe, the leader said. Where's the safe? Back room, David said, letting his voice shake. Not hard to fake fear. The adrenaline was real, just channeled differently than they'd expect. Behind the workbench. Please, I have a family. I have daughters. Shut up, the leader said, not angry. Professional. Jenkins, Ross, safe. Carter, inventory. Franks, you're on him. The 2 designated for safe duty moved to the back room. David heard them start working. Probably had a portable drill or torch. The one called Carter started opening display cases. Methodical, using a ring of keys they must have made from surveillance or an inside source. And Franks stood over David with a handgun. Far enough back to be out of reach, but close enough to guarantee a hit. Professional. Very professional. Too professional for a typical smash and grab crew. David's mind raced through what he knew about robbery crews operating in the Diamond District. In 11 years running this store, he'd heard about dozens of heists. Most were quick. Break glass, grab what you can, run. Some were more sophisticated. Surveillance, inside information, targeted hits. But this level of coordination, this level of planning, reminded David of something else. Something he'd seen in intelligence briefings during his SEAL days. The Phantom Crew. The FBI had been hunting them for 4 years. A 5-person robbery team that had hit 23 jewelry stores across 6 states. They specialized in high-end targets, used military-style tactics, and always vanished without a trace. The Bureau estimated they'd stolen $40 million in jewelry, gold, and diamonds. Not one arrest, not one solid lead. And if David was right, if these were the same people, then they were far more dangerous than typical robbers. The Phantom Crew had killed twice, both times when they encountered resistance, both times clean, professional, no hesitation, which meant David's courage current situation had just gotten significantly more complicated. The two in the back room called out, "Safe's open!" Holy shit, this is a good haul. The leader moved toward the back, keeping the shotgun trained in David's general direction. "How much?" "Gotta be 300K in diamonds, plus gold, plus cash. We hit the jackpot, 300,000. That was accurate. David kept his premium inventory in that safe, the stones he'd accumulated over years of careful buying, waiting for the right customers. His insurance company would hate this. The leader laughed. "Told you boys, this one was worth it. Old man's been holding out. Probably doesn't even report half his sales. This is why we go for the family stores. They never trust banks." David remained still, face down on the floor, hand behind his head, breathing steady, letting them think he was helpless, but his mind was working. The store layout was burned into his memory. He'd spent thousands of hours in this space. The back room had one exit to the alley. The front had the security gate, locked from the inside. They'd come through the back, which meant that was their exit route. The angles were bad. 5 armed men. He was unarmed, prone, disadvantaged in every way, unless he changed the equation. "Carter status?" the leader called. "Display cases cleaned out. Got maybe another 50K in merchandise. Good. 2 minutes and we're gone. Franks, zip tie our friend here. Can't have him calling the cops too quick." Franks moved closer, pulling out plastic zip ties. This was the moment David had been waiting for. The moment they'd get close enough to touch him. The moment their confidence would make them careless. David's mind flashed back to Fort Bragg, 1995. His SEAL Team 6 instructor, a grizzled operator named Mackenzie, demonstrating disarms on the training mat. When they get close enough to restrain you, that's when they're most vulnerable. Their focus shifts from threat assessment to control. They think the fight is over. That's when you take it back. David had practiced the move 10,000 times, on training mats, in kill houses, in ships and planes and vehicles. Muscle memory so deep it didn't require conscious thought. Franks knelt down, reaching for David's wrists. His pistol was in his right hand, finger off the trigger. Attention split between David and the zip ties in his left hand. Fatal mistake, and David moved. Years of muscle memory took over. His hands whipped from behind his head, grabbing Franks' wrist and the gun simultaneously. A savage twist. Break the trigger finger, rotate the wrist against the joint, strip the weapon. The motion was poetry, economics of violence. No wasted movement, no hesitation. Frank screamed. The sound was high-pitched, shock and pain combined. David rolled, coming up with the pistol in a two-handed grip, and fired twice into Franks' center mass before the man could process what was happening. The double tap, 2 rounds, tight grouping, center of the thoracic cavity. The way he'd been trained, the way he'd done it hundreds of times in training and dozens of times for real. The sound was deafening in the small store. The muzzle flash strobed the darkness. Frank's body jerked backward, the momentum carrying him into a display case. Glass shattered. Blood sprayed across vintage watch cases that David's grandfather had installed in 1967. David was already moving. The leader with the shotgun was turning, bringing the weapon around. Shotguns were devastating at close range, but slow to maneuver in tight spaces. That 3-second pivot time was an eternity in combat. Too slow. David fired 3 rounds, 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. The failure drill, Mozambique drill, whatever you wanted to call it. 2 to center mass to stop the threat, 1 to the cranial vault to end it. The leader's head snapped back. The shotgun clattered to the floor. His body followed, crumpling like a marionette with cut strings, the back of his skull painting the wall behind him with dark arterial spray. Carter was in the middle of the store, reaching for his weapon that he'd foolishly set down on a display case while he worked. His hand was still 6 inches away when David's rounds found him. 4 shots, rapid succession. The first 3 hit center mass. The 4th caught him as he was falling, entering through the collarbone and angling down into his heart. Carter jerked backward, crashed into the display case holding estate jewelry, shattered glass cascading across the floor like deadly rainfall. A 1920s Art Deco necklace, 14-karat gold with natural sapphire, worth maybe 30,000, fell across his chest as he slid down the wall. 7 seconds, 3 down, 2 left in the back room. David heard them scrambling, shouting. The element of surprise was gone, but so was their numerical advantage, and more importantly, so was their psychological advantage. They'd come in expecting an easy target, an old jeweler who'd beg for his life. Instead, they'd walked into a kill box operated by someone who'd spent 16 years perfecting the art of close-quarters violence. He moved to cover behind the main counter. Solid oak, his grandfather had built it, thick enough to stop most handgun rounds. He controlled his breathing, assessed his ammunition. Franks' gun was a Glock 19. He'd fired 9 rounds. That left 6 in the magazine, plus 1 in the chamber if they'd been carrying 15-round mags. tags. "Federal agents!" David shouted. It was a lie, but it might buy him confusion. "Drop your weapons and come out with your hands up." Silence from the back room. Then, "Bullshit. You're the jeweler. And you're the Phantom Crew," David said. 4 years running, 23 hits, 40 million in merchandise. The FBI's got your DNA from the Newark job. They've got surveillance footage from Philadelphia. You're finished either way. But if you come out now, you live. I promise you that." More silence. Then, "You killed 3 of our guys. They pointed guns at me. I defended myself. You two still have a choice. Drop the weapons, walk out, surrender to the police when they arrive, or die in my back room. Your call." David heard whispered conversation. They were weighing options. Professional criminals. They'd assess risk and reward. 3 of their crew dead. Unknown armed opponent between them and the exit. No backup, no escape route. Smart play was surrender. But criminals rarely made smart plays when cornered. David heard it before he saw it. The shotgun blast that blew a hole through the wall between the back room and the main store. Amateur tactic. Waste of ammunition, revealing their position. David fired twice through the wall, 6 inches to the left of where the shotgun blast had come from. He heard a scream. Someone went down hard. He could hear the body hit the floor. One left. The last one, Jenkins or Ross, David didn't know which, came out shooting. Wild, panicked. Rounds punching through drywall, shattering what few display cases remained intact. None of the shots came close to David. David waited for the pause, the moment when an untrained shooter stops to reassess. It came after the 8th or 9th shot, a hesitation as the man probably checked his ammunition or looked for a target. David rose from behind the counter and fired his last rounds. 3 shots, center mass. The man dropped. Silence. David stood in the ruins of his grandfather's store, breathing hard, the pistol still raised. Cordite smoke hung in the air. Glass crunched under his feet. Blood pooled on the floor. 5 bodies. The whole thing had taken 14 minutes. David cleared each body methodically, checking for pulses. All dead except one, the last one he'd shot. The man was bleeding out, sucking in ragged breaths, but still conscious. David kicked the weapon away and knelt down. "Help!" the man gasped. "Please!" "Who sent you?" David asked. His voice was calm, professional, the same voice he'd used in interrogations during his SEAL days. "Fuck you." David pressed on the wound. Not hard enough to kill faster, just hard enough to hurt. "Who sent you? Who gave you my store?" the man screamed. Then, gasping, "Anonymous tip. Dark web forum. Said you had premium inventory. Said you were an easy target. Said the old man couldn't fight back. Someone set you up," David said. "Someone wanted you to hit this store specifically." "Who?" "I don't know, I swear. We just followed the information. It was good intel. It was always good intel before." The man's eyes were glazing. David recognized the signs. Massive internal bleeding. Minutes left, maybe less. "What's your real name?" David asked. "Thomas. Thomas Chen. FBI's been calling us the Phantom Crew." "Stupid name. You killed 2 people, Thomas. Store owners who fought back. Had to. No witnesses. That was the rule." "Not tonight," David said quietly. Thomas tried to laugh but coughed blood instead. "Who the fuck are you?" "I'm just a jeweler," David said. Thomas died 30 seconds later. David stood up slowly. His hands weren't shaking. His heart rate was already dropping back to normal. This was what the training did. It automated the responses, let you function under stress that would paralyze normal people. But David wasn't normal. He'd never been normal. And for a few minutes, in the darkness of his family's jewelry store, he'd been exactly what the Navy had trained him to be, a weapon. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. "This is David Rosen at Rosen's Fine Jewelry, 47th Street. 5 armed men just tried to rob my store. Send police and ambulances. The men are all down. I'm unharmed. I'll be waiting outside." The operator started asking questions, but David hung up. He walked to the front of the store, unlocked the security gate, and stepped outside into the cool New York night. Police arrived in 4 minutes, FBI in 12. By 9 p.m., the entire block was lit up with emergency lights. David sat on the curb, wrapped in a blanket someone had given him, watching the controlled chaos. The FBI agent who eventually sat down next to him was maybe 35. Sharp eyes, expensive suit. Her badge said, Special Agent Sarah Morrison, Organized Crime Division. She had a tablet in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. "Mr. Rosen," she said carefully, "I need you to walk me through what happened tonight." David told her, methodically, chronologically, the break-in at 8:07 p.m., the 5 armed men, their tactical approach, the moment they got close enough for him to take action, the fight, the aftermath. All of it true, none of it mentioning his background. Morrison listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Rosen, I've been investigating the Phantom Crew for 3 years. That's what we call them. These 5 men have robbed 23 jewelry stores across 6 states. They've killed 2 people who resisted. They're They're professionals, ex-military, we think. They plan their hits for months. And you're telling me that you, a 52-year-old jeweler, took down all 5 of them in 14 minutes? In the dark? With perfect shot placement? David met her eyes. I got lucky. They got careless. Morrison laughed tiredly. Mr. Rosen, luck doesn't explain 3 double taps in a Mozambique drill. Luck doesn't explain tactical movement in a multi-hostile environment. She pulled out her tablet and showed him a photo. David at 25, in desert fatigues, standing with his SEAL Team 6 trident visible. We ran your fingerprints through the system, Morrison said. You have a very interesting background, Mr. Rosen. 16 years with DevGru. SEAL Team 6. Your record is heavily redacted, but what we can see is impressive. Close quarters combat instructor, multiple classified deployments. You were good at what you did. That was a long time ago, David said quietly. Apparently not long enough that you forgot how to do it, Morrison said. You saved your own life tonight. You also closed one of the FBI's longest-running investigations. The Phantom crew is done because of you. I just wanted to close my store and go home. Morrison studied him. Off the record, I think someone set them up. The Phantom crew was smart. They didn't hit targets that posed threats. But tonight, they walked into a store owned by a former SEAL Team 6 operator. That's not coincidence. Someone wanted them here. David had been thinking the same thing. Do you have any idea who might want you dead? Morrison asked. David thought about it. 16 years in special operations meant making enemies, but most of those enemies were dead or imprisoned. The ones still free wouldn't use a robbery crew. No one I can think of, David said. Morrison nodded. We'll investigate. For now, you're a victim and a witness. We'll need a formal statement tomorrow. But understand, you're going to be famous. 5 dead criminals, all killed by a jeweler. The media will love this. Your quiet life just got very loud. David closed his eyes. Everything he'd built, the quiet civilian life he'd carefully constructed, was about to be shredded. Is there any way to keep my military background out of this? David asked. I can try, Morrison said, but someone's going to find it eventually. She stood up, handing David her card. Call me tomorrow. And Mr. Rosen, thank you. These people have been a nightmare. You did what we couldn't, David nodded. Morrison walked away, already on her phone, coordinating with other agents. David sat on the curb for another hour while they processed the scene. Eventually, his daughters showed up, Rebecca and Sarah, both crying, both hugging him so hard he thought his ribs might crack. He told them he was fine, told them it was over, told them he loved them. At midnight, they finally let him leave. The store was still a crime scene. It would be days before he could go back inside. David walked the 3 blocks to his apartment, his daughters on either side of him, and tried to process what had just happened. Someone had set up the Phantom crew. Someone had sent them to his store specifically, with information that should have been secure. Someone had wanted David dead, or wanted the crew caught, or both. But who and why? David thought about Thomas Chen's last words. Anonymous tip. Dark web forum. Said you were an easy target. Someone who knew David's background. Someone who knew he wasn't an easy target at all. Someone who'd used the Phantom crew as a weapon against him, or used him as a weapon against them. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, David was just a father who'd survived. A man who'd protected what was his. A jeweler who'd closed his store one last time before everything changed. 3 days later, David reopened Rosen's fine jewelry. The back door had been replaced. The walls had been patched. The blood had been cleaned. The display cases had been restocked. Everything looked normal, except for the small sign David had placed on the counter. It was a quote, written in Hebrew, that his grandfather had kept in the store for decades. Whoever destroys a single life is considered as though he destroyed an entire world, and whoever saves a single life is considered as though he saved an entire world. David had saved his own life that night, and by taking down the Phantom crew, he'd probably saved future victims. The math was complicated, but the result was clear. Sometimes the best heroes are the ones nobody knows are heroes. The ones who use their skills quietly, without fanfare, without recognition. The ones who simply do what needs to be done when the moment arrives. Have you ever wondered about the people behind the counters in the stores you visit? The ones who seem ordinary, unremarkable, forgettable? What if they're carrying skills, experiences, and stories you can't imagine? Share your thoughts in the comments below. At Secrets Never Told, we believe the greatest warriors are often the ones hiding in plain sight, protecting us, serving us, watching over us without ever asking for acknowledgement. Until next time, remember that danger can come from anywhere, and protection often comes from the most unexpected places. The person helping you pick out a wedding ring might just be the one thing standing between you and disaster.